everyone. My name is Subash Rajavel. I'm the founder and chief editor of XGenome. And joining with me today is Dr. David Albert, founder and chief medical officer of AliveCor. How are you doing, doctor?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure.
I want to first get started with your personal journey. So, you are a physician, an inventor, and you founded multiple technology companies. And then, most recently, AliveCor. You founded it in 2011 when nobody was talking about digital health or personal health devices.
They call me the grandfather of digital health. So I'm a grandfather now, and I was one of the early people to bring out a real healthcare product in what is today known as digital health.
I think that absolutely makes sense. Right before the interview, I Googled and I even checked it in Chat GPT. There is no father of digital health. So I think you can be a father or grandfather, whatever you want to be.
Yeah, well, my friend John Noster calls me that. But, he calls me the father of digital health, and I said I'm the grandfather.
Okay, so for viewers, could you please tell about your journey from medicine to digital health and what was your vision then and how has it evolved?
Sure. Well, I started, nothing was planned. Everything was reactive. I was in medical school and at Duke, and I was 8 months away from graduating, and my father had a heart attack. And I went home from North Carolina to Oklahoma, where my parents lived. And when they discharged my dad from the hospital, they said, "We want you to walk." He lived out in the country. So your heart rate gets to 120. Well, I knew my dad at the time was 70. He lived to be 91, by the way. And that he couldn't measure his heart rate. There were no chest straps. There were no watches. There were no heart rate monitors. So I went back to Duke, and one of my classmates had been an undergraduate biomedical engineer at Duke, and he had a friend of his who had been his classmate who was getting his PhD in biomedical engineering. So he introduced me. And I gave this guy $200 to build a heart rate monitor for my dad. 2 months later, he brought me a breadboard with all these wires. He says, "It doesn't work, but that's all I'm going to work on it." I was so upset. So at the time, I just decided I'm never going to be dependent on someone else. So I went to the dean of the medical school and the dean of the engineering school. I said, I want to take a leave of absence and I want to go to engineering school and become an engineer. And that began a 2-year process, undergraduate, multivariable calculus, fluid mechanics, differential equations, electronic circuits, digital logic, learned about Carnot maps and all kinds of things. And at the end of it, I went back and finished medical school, and I had already invented 2 inventions, which I patented, and I sold one, which was an ultrasound machine that I built to a medical company. And then I left, went back to Oklahoma to finish my training, and I was driving a Corvette I had bought myself. My friends were all eating ramen noodles in their residencies. I was better off. I had a wife, I had a child, and I came up with a new invention. And nobody wanted to license it. And that's all I knew. So I went to my wife and I went to my dad and I said, I'm going to drop out of my training and start a company. Well, they didn't think that was a very good idea. But my mentors, both at the University of Oklahoma, chief of cardiology was the late Dr. Ralph Lazera and the late Dr. Galen Wagner at Duke, both famous cardiologists, convinced my dad and my mom, let Dave do this. He can always come back and be a doctor. He'll just come back and be a cardiologist. Don't worry about it. If it fails, it fails. Hey, I'm sure they expected it to fail. I probably did too. Well, that was 1987. Guess what? Here I am.
Wow, that's a wild
80 patents, 4 companies, sold my last company to GE in 2001. It was the chief scientist of GE Cardiology till 2004 when I couldn't stand it. Now they're an investor and a partner of mine in AliveCor. And so in that company, I had an idea in 1995 to have an ECG device that could wirelessly transmit a patient's cardiac rhythm to a cardiologist directly. Nothing in the middle. And that this would improve care. Well, that wasn't practical then. We made a device, we got a 510K, got a patent, but it was a Rube Goldberg, wires, modem cards, cell phones. It was a joke. And then came Steve Jobs, one more time, iPhone. And when they built the App Store and stuff, about 18 months later, after 2000, about 2009, I got a couple of partners of mine who I'd known for a long time, two very smart engineers in Australia, and I said, I had this idea, and I think we can do this. And they went, no, that's a crazy idea. Well, many of my ideas are crazy, but we did it. And then on December 30th, 2010, I went into my little office and I made an unscripted 4-minute video and uploaded it because I was going to CES.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been January 2011, 11 years ago, and no, 12 years ago. This is 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And a day later, we had 250,000 views of that video. And I was
Wow.
called by Good Morning America and Fox and Friends, and everybody wanted me. And that began the journey. And 2 months later, Dr. Eric Topol called me and said, Dave, I got to get one. And Qualcomm came in as a early investor in our Series A. And then a guy named Vinod Khosla walked up to me at CES in 2012 and said, I'd like you to come see me. He's today our chairman of the board and has been a staunch supporter of AliveCor. And in the meantime, we've sold millions of devices. We have over 180 million ECGs in our cloud, get about 1 million every week. At this show, I've had 2 people walk up to me and say, you saved my brother-in-law's life, you saved, and they wanted to take their picture with me. So they said, I want to show my sister that this is the guy who saved her husband's life. And I had 2 people come up and do that kind of thing. And I was like, it's embarrassing, but it makes it worthwhile. And so AliveCor, Omron, we're in the Omron booth. They're a partner, they're an investor. They've integrated our technology in, and they're a major, provider of over-the-counter consumer technologies, blood pressure tens, things like that. And they're an excellent partner. As like I said, we have Qualcomm, which is a pretty well-known technology partner. And then we have a little company called GE Healthcare, newly independent as of Wednesday. That is now has a board seat, is a major investor, and is a strong partner. So, we've built a company. We have TV ads. People recognize Cardia Mobile because they see it on TV, and we feel like we've helped. And so, we're a digital health company, but we're really a medical company. We have lots of FDA clearances. We have over almost 200 peer-reviewed papers, publications. We just happen to sell our product directly to consumers. And one of the secrets is 60% of our sales are on the recommendation of a cardiologist.
Fantastic.
Go buy a Cardia. And so whether it's Mayo Clinic, another full disclosure investor in our company, doctors all over the world know Cardia, believe in it, trust it, and it's been a journey.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. So, doctor, I want to pick your brain on this. So you have taken multiple of your products through a time-consuming and painstaking process of clinical trials, regulatory approval. So for all those digital health entrepreneurs watching our show, especially the ones that coming with Silicon Valley mindset of building an MVP and trying to fail fast, and once they get into digital health, they understand it the hard way that it takes like multiple years and $1 million of investment before they can see any revenue. So if I'm a digital health entrepreneur, how can I validate my product market fit before I go ahead and invest the money and the time?
Well, it's very difficult. I mean, but you need to go, first of all, you need to have relationships. We have some superpowers at AliveCor. The chiefs of cardiology of the major institutions in the country are personal friends of mine. I've been around for 35 years. And so we have that knowledge. We can seek those people to validate our ideas. That's what you need. Yes, you're right. There are people with Silicon Valley views, and there have been some great failures of people who did not have the science down, who thought it was easy. I can take these chips, put them together, and I've got a solution, let alone ever get through the FDA. And they learned some hard lessons. So what I would tell them is do not lead. I've told many young entrepreneurs, don't lead with a press release, lead with data. And I said, that's my suggestion. I'm actually going to tell somebody tonight that same lesson is Don't tell me how cool your thing is. Show me your results, and show me your results that come from an independent, no vested interest party who's well respected. And I said, that's how you'll get accepted. That's how you'll make sure your product fits the market and that will get through the FDA. And then you're going to have to be able to fund clinical trials and fund the FDA clearance process, all of which are not things they're familiar with, not things they're comfortable with. So, by the way, there's, this old notion, there's no I in team. You better have a team that understands these issues. They're specific to the medical industry. Digital health, you can make an app that just tells you, are you hungry and this is the food you should eat. But if you truly make a medical diagnostic monitoring product, you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to validate it before it'll ever get accepted, let alone through the FDA.
That's fantastic, Doctor. I think that's something that every digital health entrepreneur should hear from you and experts, and that they have to understand the landscape before they get into the space.
That's correct.
So, Doctor, so you have a single lead ECG, a 6-lead ECG, and then you have this traditional 12-lead ECGs at hospitals and clinics. So, as a patient, is a 6-lead ECG good enough to detect your arrhythmia or whatever, atrial fibrillation or whatever, or do they have to really go to a 12-lead ECG at hospitals, or which situation warrants which one?
Well, in 2012, I was at a medical meeting. I gave a talk, very prestigious meeting. And after my talk, a gentleman got up in the audience and said, Dr. Albert, this is just one lead. It's not a 12-lead ECG. To which I said, how many leads does an automatic external defibrillator that saved that young football player's life the other night, how many leads does it use to decide it's going to save your life? And I pointed at him. It's one, by the way, and he sat back down. But the reality is, there are many things you can do with a single lead ECG, and this is our new revolutionary CardioMobile card, form factor of a credit card, world's thinnest ECG. This is our standard CardioMobile, which is already small. Okay, it's not. It probably gives you 80% of the information you can get from a 12 lead, but it's not a 12 lead. It can't diagnose heart attacks. You can diagnose another 10% with our 6-lead ECG. It gives you half of the 12-lead ECG. But again, it's not going to diagnose heart attacks. It has limitations. But these devices are outstanding when it comes to patient-acquired data, which is principally around things like arrhythmias. Do I have atrial fibrillation? Do I have abnormal heartbeats? Do I have an abnormal, what's called a QT interval? We have FDA clearance for our 6-lead to monitor that, which is important for all kinds of drugs that can cause a very serious arrhythmia, something called torsade de pointes, which is caused by a prolonged QT. So there are a lot of things you can do with our current devices, but they can't do everything a 12-lead ECG does. They can't do really important things like diagnosing heart attacks that a 12-lead ECG does. So, we start off with a single lead ECG. We have a 6-lead ECG. We have a form factor. I can't see this getting any smaller. So that just leaves a 12-lead ECG. I wonder where we're working on next. I wonder what I have in my bag over there. I wonder why the world's leader in 12-lead ECG, General Electric Healthcare, invested in our company, became our corporate partner. Because we're not going to leave anything, but we're going to focus on home, out of the hospital. We're not making hospital products. We're making home products. We're making self-applied products. We're making products that can be used by anyone, anywhere. And that's both not just from a usability perspective, but from a financial perspective. This is $79. Okay?
Wow.
That you can buy this in CVS or Amazon, and that makes it available everywhere in the world.
Yeah, put it in my pocket and go everywhere.
Exactly. That's right. So that's our goal. That's our mission, and we're proud to have partners like Omron and GE Healthcare and Qualcomm to support our mission, and clinical partners like Mayo Clinic, Mass General, Duke, University of Oklahoma, where my wife and I both have worked, and so we're going to continue to push.
That's fantastic, Doctor. So you must be receiving all these millions and millions of ECGs from patients, And then you have a proprietary machine learning model that analyzes all these ECG. And then you have cardiac care service where real cardiologists evaluate the ECG. So please explain us, like, when would you use an AI versus a real cardiologist?
Well, first of all, the patients, the customers get to pick. If they want a cardiologist to overread it, in the app, they send it to a cardiologist, the cardiologist interpretation comes back.
Mm-hmm.
That's independent of the algorithmic models, the AI that we use on it.
Mm-hmm.
The cardiologists can see those models, but they make their own assessments. You know, all algorithmic assessments are preliminary until confirmed by a cardiologist. So even if you record something yourself and it says AFib, that's not a diagnosis until you take it to your doctor and they confirm it's AFib. And there are literally tens of thousands of doctors around the world that take cardia recordings and believe in them and trust them to help monitor their patients.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So they work together.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, every time a cardiologist interprets a rhythm, it helps feed better data into our AI models.
Okay, that's interesting. So your proprietary machine learning model, is that something that FDA evaluated as well?
Oh, absolutely. All of our we have software as a medical device clearances for our AI, and so that gets that gets cleared independent of the hardware. So those AI can be used on all of our devices. We just have to validate the signal.
That's fantastic. So, so for a moment, let's talk about heart attack, the #1 killer in the world. So how far away are we from the holy grail of like continuous heart monitoring? Can a wearable or a non-invasive device like continuously monitor a patient for a potential heart attack and then help them take an action that can save their life? Are we there?
Well, we're not there yet, but that sounds like a really interesting problem to work on. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, the world's #1 killer. Let me speak to something. I went to Chennai, India, 2 years ago, before the pandemic.
That's where I'm from.
All right, I went to Chennai and I visited multiple hospitals there: Apollo, 2 government hospitals, and I went into the coronary care units with doctors. 2 of the Indian cardiologists were trained in the United States. They're fellows of the American College of Cardiology, but they went back to India to take care of their own people. And they went, you know, AFib is interesting, but that's not our problem here in South India. Coronary artery disease and heart attacks is our problem. We have all these villages, and you know, we have these big hospitals here, but they don't have that. We need to know somebody's having a heart attack fast so we can get them in here and take care of them. Because coronary disease and heart attacks is a huge burden in India. Said, you need to help us with that problem.
Actually, this question is from my dad, who's a physician in India. He's not a cardiologist, but I told him that I'm going to interview Dr. Albert, and then I asked him to give some questions, and this is one of the questions that came from him.
I can tell you that had a big impact on me, because I went to those 4 hospitals and they all said the same thing. The same thing. They took me from patient to patient in the coronary intensive care unit. And so I can just tell you, I have a personal anecdote. So my oldest son is a very well-respected physician. He trained at Cedars-Sinai, one of our biggest, most prestigious hospitals in LA. Mm-hmm. And when he was there, he called me up one day and said, Dad, he was in a rotation in the coronary care units, the biggest one on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And he said, 80% of these people came in after 8 hours. That meant our ability to stop and treat their heart attack, to prevent the damage, had been seriously undermined. There's a golden hour to get them in, to open up their artery, to restore the blood flow. He said, Dad, you got to help with that. So I have my own son, and I have all these doctors in India telling me the same thing. There's a great need. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, sounds like a really interesting problem to work on.
Yeah, that would be great to have. Even I checked out Abbott Labs, the cardio MEMS. So everybody's trying to solve a piece of the puzzle, but solving the entire puzzle
is a good product. One of their chief medical officers, a guy named Dr. Phil Adamson, is a good friend of mine, was also at the University of Oklahoma. He and I published papers together. It's a great product for heart failure monitoring at home, but it's not about preventing heart attacks. It's not about detecting heart attacks and getting those patients treated. And that's a huge problem, and it's a global problem, and it's one that needs solving in a very inexpensive, easy to use way. That sounds like something that AliveCor does.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So,
Great. So, Doctor, my next question is, so you've been partnering with all those healthcare professionals, and then you have a very strong consumer brand. How about your relationship with insurance companies? Have they ever considered like lowering premiums for vulnerable patients, anything like
well,
that?
we've had some preliminary conversations. I mean, mainly we're talking to like Medicare Advantage, people who hold the risk.
Hmm.
Kaiser Permanente, they're the payer as well as the provider. Medicare Advantage, they're the payer. They hold all the risk. They get capitated by Medicare. They get paid a certain amount every month. And they want to control the costs as well as keep those patients alive. Patient dies, they don't get any more money. So those kinds of payers are the ones that we're focused on.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, okay, my next question, how about your relationship? Since I'm coming from the biopharma background, I want to understand your relationship with biopharma and the CROs. Is it for commercial therapies or is it for clinical trials?
Yes, it's
Both.
for both. So we have relationships with IQVIA and Medibol and Medidata. We're over in the Medidata booth,
Mhm.
as well as ongoing clinical projects with likes of Novartis and Bristol Myers Squibb. So we have both projects that are AliveCor technology is being used on patients receiving medicines, FDA cleared medicines, and we have projects in the clinical trial space. We have both. So we have our own biopharma group that is focused on that area of work and have a lot of interest from biopharma companies.
That's fantastic with decentralized clinical trials being the buzzword or all rage now, especially a product like AliveCor can add so much value to
Well,
patients.
and the fact is there's a lot of people going to hybrid trials now, not just decentralized ones, but both decentralized and and our products fit with all of those.
That's fantastic, Doctor. So let me ask my last question. So I've been asking this to everyone in the conference here. So if you have to pick one recent trend, could be in biopharma, or med device, or healthcare, what is the one recent technology trend for healthcare or life sciences that you're excited about?
Well, AI. I mean,
Hmm.
it's the ability to utilize vast stores of data to improve our ability to augment intelligence.
Hmm.
It's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence because we're still going to have providers who will use that augmentation to provide better care.
Hmm.
So that to me is what is the most exciting trend.
That's fantastic, Doctor, and thank you so much for your
You're very
time.
welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Take care.